Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk a little bit about and remember the life of pro wrestler, politician, all around famous martial artist or mixed martial artist, and father, many would consider, of mixed martial arts, one of the originators of mixed martial arts, a very famous professional wrestler, especially in the country of Japan. Antonio Inoki has passed away at the age of 79, and he's a WWE Hall of Famer. He went into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2010. He is a former WWE champion. He won the WWE Championship, although not recognized by the WWE officially in their chronicling of champions. He won the WWE Championship in 1979 and also won their now defunct Martial Arts Championship in 1978. For many who would I compare him to here in the United States, I would say he's a combination of Ric Flair and Vince McMahon and a little bit of Jesse Ventura, because not only was he the most famous wrestler in Japan, he also he also got involved with politics in Japan, being elected to the Japanese version of Congress in the 1990s, and that is big for a wrestler. I mean, we've seen it kind of here, with wrestlers like Kane and wrestlers like Jesse Ventura becoming mayors of cities. But imagine, imagine if a professional wrestler here in the United States was elected to Congress. That'd be huge. Um, so he was not only well known in the arena of wrestling, but also in the arena of politics, which factors into his decision making in his career, especially in 1995, in which he organized a diplomatic mission to North Korea on behalf of Japan and the United States, in which he and Ric Flair became two, the only two foreign wrestlers to ever wrestle in North Korea. North Korea, of course, at that time was undergoing a regime change. Kim Il Sung, who was the founder of the North Korean Communist Revolution, had just died, and he was handing over the reins of his political power to Kim Jong Un. And at this time, Inoki was in the Japanese Congress, and he had some kind of scandals. So, um, in order to get better PR with the Japanese public and to basically smooth it over with the Japanese public, he devised this idea, this co-promotional idea with WCW. And of course, the original plan was to have WCW's main headliner, the biggest star in American wrestling, Hulk Hogan, to wrestle Inoki in Korea, this big, massive event. Because North Korea at that time, just like now, North Korea is very closed off from the outside world. People don't really know anything about North Korea. It's very shrouded in mystery. We all know that it's a communist regime and that it's a dictatorship, but we don't know much else. So the idea was Inoki and Flair will wrestle this match, and they will hopefully open up diplomatic ties on the behalf of the United States and Japan to the country of North Korea. But the problem is North Korea never seen professional wrestling. It's not a country that's known to have professional wrestling in their culture or in their entertainment. So they don't know what to expect. And in fact, I heard that the communist regime, Ric Flair has talked about this in several shoot interviews, the communist regime forced people to attend this event. Like, listen, you're going to attend the event or else we're going to kill you, right? So they're forcing them to clap. They don't know anything about it. And as Inoki comes out, Inoki, a representative of Japan and North and Korea, both Koreas have a tremendously tumultuous history. For over 50 years, the country of Japan, and especially during World War II, occupied of North Korea. They tortured the North Koreans. They really discriminated against them. Basically, what they did to the Chinese in the Nanking Death March, but even worse. So, Korea, especially North Korea, has tremendous heat or tremendous animosity, if you will, with the country of Japan. So, of course, Inoki's going to get booed. But what about Ric Flair? He represents the United States. The United States also um, an enemy of the Korean people, also waged war against the Korean communist regime for several years. Also, you know, did a lot of atrocities to the Korean people. We know the Korean War, which basically didn't even end until officially 2018. The United States helping, of course, South Korea against the communist regime. So, of course, Ric Flair is going to get booed out of the building. And again, they don't know anything about professional wrestling. They don't know anything about the inner workings of professional wrestling, anything about kayfabe. They don't. I mean, they're taking it as real. You know what I mean? So they're going. These guys are going out there, no reaction whatsoever, no clapping, dead silence. And if they're getting any reaction whatsoever, this Japanese national and this American national going out there risking their life. Because if they fuck up somehow and they don't entertain the people and they don't especially entertain Kim Jong Un, they might get killed, by the communist regime. And they don't care about how it looks on the international scene with Japan and the United States, because they don't even have diplomatic relationships with Japan or the United States. So what happens at the end of the match? And I remember this pay per view. I watched this pay per view on television at the time because I had um, free cable, so I could watch all the pay per views. And even though you know I didn't know anything about Antonio Inoki or know about his history, it was still wrestling, and I still wanted to watch it. So it was complete dead silence. Then, as Inoki gets up, he does his finishing move, and he wins the match. All the people stand up and they clap for this Japanese man. So basically, he reached across the aisle and in an international gesture of gratitude, a diplomatic gesture of gratitude, basically won over the North Korean people, at least for that night. So that's one of the most famous things that Inoki did. Other famous things that Antonio Inoki was responsible for. The year is 1976. It is the bicentennial of the United States, the 200-year birthday of the United States, and Muhammad Ali has this idea for a boxer versus wrestler match. His promoter Bob Arum is, looking to get Ali somehow involved in this boxer versus wrestler thing at Shea Stadium in 1976. So originally it was supposed to be, they were talking to Bruno Sammartino, who at that time was the biggest star in the New York City area, the New York City Northeastern Territory. But Bruno Sammartino had a match with Stan Hansen and he broke his neck legitimately for a shoot. So he was in the hospital. It was perceived that he wasn't going to make it. So Aram nixes that idea, and the Japanese promoters, particularly Antonio Inoki's guys, come up with the idea that Inoki will do it, and it will get international um, recognition. So Ali's people, but the people within the Nation of Islam, they think that it's going to be a work of a regular professional wrestling match, a work. Ali and Inoki gonna go through the motions, but Inoki has plans for it to be a shoot, a real match, because at this time in Japan, Inoki was trained by a man named Carl Gotch, who is basically the god of professional wrestling in Japan, one of the people responsible for the evolution of what professional wrestling fans, especially professional wrestling fans of Japanese wrestling know as the strong style of wrestling, the semi-realistic style of wrestling that incorporates a lot of martial arts kicks, a lot of martial art punches, and a lot of martial arts submissions. A more realistic style than what we are used to in North America, the sports entertainment style. So, and what they would do in Japan is they would have Inoki wrestle people of other disciplines to try and prove that catch wrestling, the style he was trained in by Carl Gotch, was the best style. This is the same thing that the Gracies would do in Brazil. That was the Gracie Challenge that eventually evolved into the first UFC in 1993. So they were doing that in Japan. They were called mixed style rule matches. And that's what they wanted to do with Ali. They wanted to do actual discipline versus discipline. Inoki with wrestling, Ali with boxing, and have it be for real, a real contest, a real shoot, not like a work, like wrestling, right? So, um, Ali's people are like, hell no. He still had some viability at that time. Ali was kind of winding down. He would do a lot of these for publicity stunts, kind of like with Mayweather right now, like fighting Jake Paul, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Ali would then later fight Lilo Alzada and other football players, for publicity stunt. He was basically doing this for money. He was winding down his career because his association with the Nation of Islam, that they were taking all his money, they were taking advantage of him financially. He had a couple of failed marriages, so he really needed the money. So he's like, you know what? I will do it as a shoot, but there has to be certain rules that Inoki cannot grab me. So grappling and submissions are out, and he can't stand on his feet. So he has to just fight me from fight me laying down and just kick me in the shins. So throughout the whole match, Inoki is kicking him at his shins and laying down like this. And it's a really, really boring match and a really weird setup that they had going on. Eventually, they lost money. They put it on closed circuit television. Vince McMahon Sr., the chief promoter of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the father of the current Vince, got involved with it. They lost money. They basically lost their shirts. If it was not for Bruno Sammartino coming out of retirement earlier than he was supposed to and doing the rematch with Stan Hansen, it would have been a complete bust. The papers basically made a joke of it, basically made a mockery of it. But it is historical, not only because Muhammad Ali got involved in wrestling, because he would get involved in wrestling later. He had some kind of confrontation with Gorilla Monsoon later on. And of course, he would be involved with WrestleMania 1. And he would do some things with Mid-South Wrestling way later on in like the mid-'80s. And plus, he respected professional wrestling. He got a lot of his shtick from Gorgeous George, a lot of his shtick from Freddie Blassie, who was in his corner that night in 73. So that wouldn't be the last time we would see him in wrestling, but that would be the first time we would see him in wrestling. But it was historic because the United States had never seen a boxer against a wrestler in a real contest before, this mixed rules match. Later, this would become the theme of the UFC, which would evolve into the modern sport that we see today of professional mixed martial arts, striking and grappling combinations together. Of course, they couldn't really do it like they wanted to do it. Inoki had done it, but like I said, he did it before in Japan. He had matches against the Pakistani Pelawani player, Akam Pelawan, in the mid-'60s in New Japan. He had matches against judo guys, matches against karate guys, matches against kung fu guys, but they didn't. Ali's people, Bob Arum, and especially the Nation of Islam that Ali was still associated with, through the Islam guys, threatened Inoki's life. They told him that they'll kill this was the quote from them, they'll kill his quote unquote yellow ass um, if if he was to touch and injure Ali in any sort of real way. So he's just kicking at his shins the whole time, like I said. But it's historic because it was the first mixed martial arts type match on American soil. um, just a brief background of Antonio Inoki. He was born in Yokohama, Japan in the 1950s. And when he was 14 years old, his family moved to Brazil, which was where he grew up in. And he got involved with discus playing. He got involved with javelin throwing. He became a real athlete. And there he learned also jujitsu because, again, the Gracies were involved with jujitsu. A lot of Japanese immigrants. Um, there's a lot of Japanese immigrants in Brazil. Um, Masudo Maeda, the father of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the one who taught Royce Gracie's father Jiu-Jitsu, was one of those Japanese immigrants, and Antonio Inoki was too, which is why he chose the name Antonio after the famous South American wrestler, big star in the New York area in the 1950s wrestling for Capital Wrestling Corporation, Argentina Rocca or Antonino Rocca, a former gymnast turned wrestler. I talk a lot about him in my history of the WWF video. And from there, Inoki went back to Japan, where he became a tag team partner of Giant Baba. And it was funny that he and Giant Baba would be tag team partners because they would eventually become competitors. Giant Baba would go on to found All Japan Pro Wrestling, and Inoki would go on to found New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they would kind of be like the WCW and WWF of Japan, the chief rivals. Inoki would specialize in the strong style, again, like I said, that emphasizes kicks, flips, hard hitting, kind of like what Shinsuke Nakamura now is known for in the modern WWE. And Baba, who was like a 7-foot giant, he had acromegalia, the same thing that Andre the Giant had, would be known for the road style, which was more influenced by Dory Funk, Terry Funk, and more the NWA style. So they were kind of as the exact copies. And, those two guys, after the JWA dissolved, the JWA, of course, the first professional wrestling Japanese organization founded by Ricky Dozan. Ricky Dozan is the Hulk Hogan of Japanese professional wrestling. After World War II, Japan was just in dismay. Two nuclear bombs hit them, and it was ironically enough, the American wrestlers who came over there and taught them professional wrestling that provided a way for them to have their first national hero post World War II in a Korean sumo wrestler turned pro. This guy Ricky Dozan, he goes on to found the JWA, and he discovers Inoki and becomes one of Inoki's trainers. And they have this tag team, Inoki and Baba. And Inoki and Baba go their separate ways and found the two primary wrestling organizations in Japan. And Inoki becomes a national hero of Japan. So, in the 1990s, he gets involved with politics. And during the Gulf War, of course, he then goes over to Iraq, and he negotiates with Saddam Hussein because during the time that he was working together with Ali in the 70s, he became interested in Islam, and he eventually converted to Islam, changing his name to Muhammad Hussein, and he studied the religion of Islam and became acquainted with the religion of Islam. So by the time the 90s roll around, Inoki is proficient enough with the Islamic religion to, like Ali, speak on behalf of his country, Japan, and relinquished the Japanese hostages that Saddam Hussein has in his um, in his possession. So that's what he does, and he received honorary honors just like Ali did. Ali did the same thing for the United States, and Inoki did that for Japan. So that's one of the little known facts about Antonio Inoki. My personal memories of Antonio Inoki was when he came back in 1994. Um, they had him at, like I said, he worked mostly with Vince McMahon Sr. and worked mostly with the WWF, but then I guess he had a parting of the ways with the WWE, for example. And they honored him with this medal in 1994 because they were setting up the Collision and Korea thing at Bash in the Beach. And Lord Steven Regal starts berating him, starts insulting him, and then they have a match, him and Regal at Clash of Champions. Now, that following month in August, I had never seen Antonio Inoki. I never heard of Antonio Inoki. I didn't even know about the match he had with Ali in '76. I wasn't even alive then. But his wrestling was pretty good, pretty realistic, pretty tight, pretty snug. I just remember him having a tremendously large chin, kind of like a Jay Leno chin going on. But yeah, he did so much throughout his life, helping to train Ken Shamrock, helping to introduce after the disillusionment of the UWFI in in the late '90s, helping to found Pancras Organization, the organization that trained Ken Shamrock in MMA. So Ken Shamrock, one of the early stars of the UFC, wouldn't be one of those early stars if Inoki didn't get the ball rolling. I feel like Inoki and his mixed rules matches that he would have in Japan and in the United States got the ball rolling for um, modern day MMA. And of course, doing what he did in terms of the Korean hostages and, the Iraqi hostages and the diplomatic missions to Korea and his representation on the international scene really showed that a professional wrestler can, be more than just an entertainer, can be an entertainer as well as a political advocate. He would, I guess, steal or borrow. Him and Ali were friends, so I don't think this was a big thing with Ali, or Ali took it, any personal way. But he would steal slash borrow um, Ali's saying. Um, Ali, when he had the fight with Joe Frazier in '75, when he went to Zaire, um, the people go around saying in the Zahirian language, Ali Boombaye, which means praise Ali. So Inoki would steal that and he would use it as Inoki Boombaye. So anyway, rest in peace to Antonio Inoki, a legend in professional wrestling, not just in Japan, but here in the United States, and a pioneer in mixed martial arts and a political giant, especially in Japan. You know, going to those places, Saddam Hussein's Iraq, um, uh, Korea, you know, really dangerous places for any entertainer to really be at. You know, he is a name that if you know anything about wrestling history, you have to acknowledge, or MMA history, you have to acknowledge his contributions. Inoki Boombaye. Peace. Love you guys.